Dear chosen one, this message did not find you by accident. It reached you at the right moment. Because while you may be looking around, wondering why nothing seems to be changing, help is already moving in your direction. Something has already started shifting in the spiritual realm, even if you can't see the evidence of it yet. God's timing is never late, and sometimes His revelation comes right when your heart is finally ready to understand what He's been doing all along. Something inside you has been changing. Maybe you can't explain it. Maybe you just know that you don't feel the same way you did a few months ago. A new chapter is forming, and as that chapter comes together, God is aligning the things you'll need for it. The people, the open doors, the provision, the connections, and the opportunities that will match the next level of your assignment. But I also know this season hasn't been easy. It's probably been one of those seasons that is difficult to explain to anyone who hasn't lived it. You've been carrying things quietly. You've kept going when it would have been easier to stop. You've prayed prayers that nobody else heard. There were probably moments when you cried, wiped your face, and went right back to pretending everything was okay. And somehow, underneath all of that, there was still a small voice inside you saying, "Don't give up." Listen to that voice, because what you've been asking God for may already be in motion. And here's the part I really want you to hear. The answer may not come from where you've been looking. It may come through someone you haven't even met yet, a stranger who is already being stirred on your behalf, someone who will carry a word you need, a connection you need, an opportunity you couldn't create by yourself, or a door that only they can open. You may not know who they are right now. They may not even know who you are. But God knows. And when that connection finally happens, you'll look back and realize there was no way you could have arranged it yourself. It wasn't a coincidence. It was confirmation. If something inside you is saying, "I believe this," then write in the comments, "Help is already on the way." Don't write it because you want to convince yourself. Write it because you're choosing to believe that God can be working even when the evidence hasn't appeared yet. And if you want to walk through this entire message with me, subscribe and stay close. Because what I'm about to share comes in layers, and you don't want to miss what comes next. This message is for the chosen ones who are walking a path they don't always understand. And you never know who else may be watching right now, silently needing to hear the same thing. So take a breath, open your heart. Let's begin. Before we go any further into the deep mysteries of tomorrow, I need you to pause and physically partner with this move of God. If this message is piercing your soul and confirming what you already feel in your spirit, I strongly urge you to support this channel right now by giving through the link in the video description and pinned comment. Your generosity is not just a donation. It is a prophetic act, a physical seed planted into the spiritual soil of your own breakthrough. When you support God's work, you line up your finances with heaven's eternal plan, breaking the chains of lack and opening up a floodgate of divine provision over your household for generations. Take a moment right now and type this short prophetic phrase in the comments to seal your deliverance. My season of suffering expires today. Let that be the public proof of your permanent transition. Chapter 1. The mockery was part of the mission, chosen one. Have you ever sat back and wondered, why did they laugh at me? You weren't hurting anyone. You weren't trying to be better than anyone. You were simply trying to follow what you believed was right. And yet somehow, your silence became a joke. Your dreams became something people whispered about. Your choices became something they questioned. You may have even started wondering whether they were right about you. But what if their laughter wasn't proof that you were wrong? What if it was simply proof that they couldn't see what you could see? They didn't hear the conversations you had with God when nobody else was around. They didn't hear the instructions that came to you during those quiet nights. They didn't see how many times you had to encourage yourself just to keep moving. All they saw was the outside. God saw what was happening inside you. Jesus said, "Blessed are you when people insult you and persecute you and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me." The chosen have always been misunderstood. Look at Joseph. He had a dream. His brothers couldn't understand it, and instead of supporting him, they rejected him and eventually threw him into a pit. But here's what they didn't know. That pit wasn't the end of Joseph's story. It was the beginning of his journey toward the palace. And maybe you've been standing in your own version of that pit, wondering why God allowed you to end up there. Maybe you've been thinking, if this is really my path, why does it hurt so much? Because sometimes preparation doesn't look like promotion. Sometimes it looks like rejection. Sometimes it looks like being left out. Sometimes it looks like losing people you thought would be there forever. And sometimes it looks like being laughed at while you're trying to build something nobody else can see yet. But you weren't walking the common road because you weren't created for a common life. You were being prepared, not punished. Think about Sojourner Truth. She was mocked and ridiculed for speaking truth when people didn't want to hear it. People dismissed her. But she didn't allow their opinion to determine her purpose. The mockery didn't destroy her. It strengthened her. And Joseph eventually looked at the very people who had betrayed him and said, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good." I want you to think about that for a moment. What if some of the things that hurt you most are eventually going to become part of the story you tell about how God brought you through? What if the people who tried to make you feel small were unknowingly pushing you toward a place where you would finally discover your own strength? They thought they were breaking you, but God was building you. They thought you were falling apart. You were being rebuilt. The rejection became protection. The isolation became preparation. The pain became part of your testimony. Think about Frida Kahlo. She took pain that could have remained hidden and put it onto a canvas for the world to see. People criticized what they saw. But eventually, the very things that made her different became part of what made her unforgettable. That's what happens when you stop hiding the parts of your story that hurt. What people call too much may be the exact thing God uses to reach someone who has been suffering in silence. Your scars don't make you less valuable. Your story doesn't make you too much. And one day, some of the same people who laughed may look at you differently. Not because you finally convinced them, but because your life became the evidence they couldn't argue with. Your growth will speak. Your peace will speak. Your results will speak. Your obedience will speak. You've been growing roots in a place nobody could see. And now those roots are preparing to produce something visible. When that happens, don't waste your energy going back to prove a point. Your assignment was never revenge. It was revelation. You don't have to make them regret what they did. You don't have to chase their approval. Your rise was never dependent on whether they believed in you. It was dependent on whether you remained obedient to God. Think about Chadwick Boseman. The world saw his physical changes and people began to speculate. They didn't know what he was privately fighting. They saw the outside. They didn't see the battle. And that's a reminder for you too. People can judge what they see while knowing absolutely nothing about what you're carrying. So let them talk. Their disbelief isn't your delay. Their opinion isn't your destiny. God doesn't measure your calling by applause. He looks at obedience. You are not rising just to prove people wrong. You are rising because God wasn't wrong about you. The stone the builders rejected became the cornerstone. And sometimes the person everyone overlooked becomes the person God uses to build something nobody expected. Before we continue, I want you to tell me something. Have you ever been laughed at, rejected, or misunderstood simply because you were trying to do what you believed was right? Tell me about it in the comments. Don't hide that part of your story. Because sometimes putting the experience into words helps you realize something you couldn't see while you were living through it. It wasn't the end. It was preparation. And your story may give strength to someone who is still being misunderstood today. Before we go any further into the deep mysteries of tomorrow, I need you to pause and physically partner with this move of God. If this message is piercing your soul and confirming what you already feel in your spirit, I strongly urge you to support this channel right now by giving through the link in the video description and pinned comment. Your generosity is not just a donation. It is a prophetic act, a physical seed planted into the spiritual soil of your own breakthrough. When you support God's work, you line up your finances with heaven's eternal plan, breaking the chains of lack and opening up a floodgate of divine provision over your household for generations. Take a moment right now and type this short prophetic phrase in the comments to seal your deliverance. My season of suffering expires today. Let that be the public proof of your permanent transition. Chapter 2. The hidden assignment on someone else's life, chosen one. Have you ever wondered why the help hasn't come from the places you expected? You've prayed. You've waited. You've cried. And after enough time passes, it's easy to start wondering, did God actually hear me? But what if the silence isn't proof that nothing is happening? What if it's proof that something is being arranged? While you've been asking God for help, someone else may be being prepared to become part of the answer. You don't know who they are yet. You don't know their name. You don't know where they'll come from. But God does. And right now, there may be someone living an ordinary day who suddenly feels a strong pull towards something they can't explain. A thought that won't leave them alone. A decision they suddenly feel they need to make. A person they feel they need to contact. A door they feel they need to open. And they may have no idea that their obedience is connected to your prayer. God said through the prophet, "Before they call, I will answer. While they are still speaking, I will hear." Think about that. You may still be asking. God may already be arranging the answer. Think about Ruth. She wasn't walking into Boaz's field thinking, "This is where my entire future is going to change." She was simply trying to survive. But one ordinary decision placed her in the exact place where her story would change. That's how divine connections can happen. They don't always announce themselves. Sometimes they look completely ordinary at first. And then later you realize there was no way that meeting happened by accident. Consider Harriet Tubman. She escaped slavery, but she didn't stop once she reached freedom. She became the person who helped others reach it too. The people she rescued didn't necessarily know her before she appeared, but God had prepared her to become part of their answer. That's what alignment can look like. You don't have to force every door open. You don't have to chase every person. You don't have to manipulate circumstances to make your breakthrough happen. If God is arranging something, you can trust Him to arrange the right pieces. And think about Tyler Perry. There was a time when he was struggling, rejected, and even sleeping in his car. Then someone walked into one of his small performances, saw something in what he was doing, and chose to invest in his vision. One person, one yes, one connection. And suddenly a door opened that he couldn't have opened by himself. That's why I want you to stop thinking you need everyone. You don't. You need the right people. You need the right connection. You need the right door. And you need to be ready when it appears. Because somewhere, someone may already be preparing for a role they don't yet understand. Someone may be thinking about your situation without even knowing your name. Someone may be getting ready to speak your name in a room you've never entered. And when they finally appear, it may not feel like someone is rescuing you. It may simply feel like everything suddenly makes sense. You'll recognize the peace. You'll recognize the timing. You'll recognize that you couldn't have planned it yourself. The psalmist said, "The steps of a good person are ordered by the Lord." That includes the steps of the people God brings into your life. So don't give up simply because you can't see movement. The fact that you can't see it doesn't mean nothing is happening. Sometimes the most important movement is happening before you ever see the first result. If you believe God can already be preparing the right help for you, right, I receive the help God is sending. Say it with faith. Not because you know exactly how it will happen, but because you trust the one who does. And if this message is helping you, let me say this gently. Messages like this continue reaching people because some choose to support the work. There is a link in the description if you genuinely feel led to sow into it. But never give because you feel pressured. And if all you can give today is a prayer for the next person who needs this message that matters too. Let's continue. Chapter 3. A heart aligned with God draws what it has been praying for. Chosen one, have you ever noticed how sometimes help appears from the most unexpected places? Someone is kinder than they needed to be. Someone opens a door for you. Someone says exactly what you needed to hear. Someone recommends you for something you didn't even know was available. And you sit there thinking, why did they do that for me? Sometimes the answer is alignment. Not because you have some special power that forces people toward you, but because God sees what happens in the hidden place. He sees who you are when nobody is watching. He sees every time you chose integrity when taking the easy way would have been simpler. He sees every time you forgave, every time you stayed honest, every time you kept going when nobody was clapping for you. The psalmist wrote, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart." That doesn't mean God becomes a machine that gives you everything you ask for. It means that as you grow closer to Him, your heart begins to desire things that are actually connected to His purpose for you. You stop chasing everything. You become more comfortable waiting for what is right. And sometimes that quiet alignment begins to show up in ways you never expected. Think about the woman with the alabaster jar. She didn't need to convince Jesus with a long explanation. She simply came with devotion and poured out what she had. And Jesus said her act would be remembered. She wasn't trying to become famous. She was simply faithful. God sees that kind of faithfulness. The eyes of the Lord range throughout the whole earth to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to Him. People may not know everything you've done in secret, but God does. And sometimes He allows the evidence of that hidden faithfulness to show up through people. Someone remembers you. Someone recommends you. Someone helps you. Someone opens a door. Not because you manipulated them, but because God knows how to position the right people at the right time. So don't panic when things begin moving. Don't immediately assume you did something to deserve it. Sometimes you are simply watching God answer something you prayed about a long time ago. Tell me about a time when unexpected kindness or favor found you. Maybe someone helped you at exactly the right moment. Maybe a door opened when you weren't expecting it. Share that story. Someone else may need to read it today. And if you want to keep walking through these messages with me, subscribe and stay close. Because you don't want to miss the next word simply because you weren't there when the door opened. Chapter 4. Isolation prepares you for divine introduction. Chosen one, I want to talk about the part nobody likes to talk about. Being alone. Not the peaceful kind of alone. The kind where you look at your phone and realize nobody is checking on you. The kind where you stop reaching out because you're tired of always being the one who starts the conversation. The kind where you lie awake, wondering, what did I do wrong? Maybe you've asked yourself whether you're too much. Maybe you've wondered whether you're not enough. Maybe you've wondered whether God is even listening. But what if the empty room isn't evidence that God left? What if God is using that room to prepare you? He said through Hosea, "I will lead her into the wilderness and speak tenderly to her." Sometimes the wilderness isn't punishment. It's where the noise finally becomes quiet enough for you to hear God. Even Jesus entered the wilderness before His public ministry, before the crowds, before the miracles people would talk about. There was solitude. There was preparation. And David had his own version of that preparation. Before he became king, he was a shepherd. He wasn't even invited into the room when Samuel first arrived to look for the future king. Think about that. His own family didn't immediately see what God saw. But that forgotten field was training him. The lion prepared him. The quiet prepared him. The quiet prepared him. So when Goliath finally appeared, David wasn't meeting his first battle. He was meeting the battle his preparation had been leading toward. Maybe that's what your isolation has been doing. Maybe God has been teaching you to recognize His voice without needing everyone else's voice around you. Maybe He's been breaking your dependence on approval. Maybe He's been showing you that you can survive without constantly being validated. Because if you're still desperate for the wrong people's approval when the right people arrive, you might reject the right connection simply because it doesn't look familiar. That's why the room sometimes has to be cleared. Not because God wants you alone forever, but because He wants you healthy enough to recognize what belongs in your next chapter. Your next relationship may challenge you. Your next mentor may tell you things you don't want to hear. Your next friend may come from a completely different background. And if you're still trying to make everyone comfortable with you, you may not recognize the person who was actually sent to help you grow. Your hidden season has a purpose. Something can grow in quiet that would never survive in constant noise. So don't automatically interpret loneliness as rejection. Sometimes the season that feels the emptiest is preparing you for the introduction that will change everything. And when that person finally arrives, you may not have to chase them. You may not have to perform. You may not even have to explain yourself. There will simply be peace. If your loneliest season taught you something about yourself or about God, tell me what it was. Someone reading your comment may be sitting in the exact season you just came out of. Your story could remind them that the wilderness isn't forever. Chapter 5. The one who blesses you has also been tested. Chosen one, here's something you may have never considered. While you've been asking God to send help, God may also be preparing the person who will carry that help. You've been through your fire, but they may be going through theirs too. While you've been praying for purpose, they may be praying for direction. While you've been asking for the right connection, they may be asking God where they're supposed to go next. And eventually, those two prayers can meet. The person who helps you may not be living an easy life right now. They may be getting tested. Their character may be getting stretched. Their motives may be getting purified. Because God isn't only preparing you to receive, He can prepare the other person to give. Look at Joseph. Before he became a source of provision for others, he spent time in the pit, in slavery, in prison, and in silence. His preparation wasn't comfortable, but when the moment came, he was ready. And that's something you need to understand. The person God uses to bless you may have scars of their own. They may understand struggle because they've lived through it. They may know what it feels like to lose. They may know what it feels like to start over. And that's why they may handle your blessing with compassion instead of ego. Look at Madam C.J. Walker. Her own struggles became part of what shaped her desire to create opportunities for other women. Her success wasn't only about what she could keep. It became about what she could give. That's what happens when pain is transformed into purpose. And Howard Schultz experienced hardship too. Growing up in poverty and watching his father struggle shaped the way he later thought about work, dignity, and opportunity. Sometimes the thing someone survived becomes part of what makes them capable of helping another person. So don't assume the person God sends will be perfect. They may simply be prepared. They may have been tested enough to understand the weight of what they're carrying. And when you meet, it may feel different from the relationships you've known before. It won't feel like, what can I get from this person? It will feel like, why does this connection make so much sense? Because you're not necessarily being connected for dependency. You may be connected for multiplication. If you believe God is preparing the right people as He prepares you, right, I am being divinely paired. And if this message has blessed you, there is a link in the description if you genuinely feel led to support this work. Never from obligation. If all you can offer is prayer, that is still valuable. Thank you for helping this message reach people who may need it. Chapter 6. Do not miss the moment by judging the messenger. Now listen carefully, chosen one, because this may be one of the most important things in the entire message. What if the answer arrives, and you don't recognize it? What if the person you've been praying for doesn't look like the person you imagined? What if the opportunity doesn't come packaged the way you expected? You could miss something important simply because it didn't match your expectations. Scripture says, "Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing so some have entertained angels without knowing it." God has always used unexpected people. Think about Jesus. People were waiting for a Savior who looked powerful according to their standards. Instead, they got humility. They got a carpenter's son, and many missed him because they had already decided what the answer was supposed to look like. Don't make that mistake. Think about Rahab. She wasn't the obvious person people would have expected God to use. Yet she became part of the story of deliverance. God doesn't always choose the person who looks most qualified to us. He looks at the heart. Samuel was told not to judge by appearance because people look at what is outside while God looks at what is inside. So your helper may not come with the title you expected. They may not speak the way you speak. They may not come from your background. They may not even understand your faith in the same way you do. But their obedience can still be part of God's answer. God has used donkeys, ravens, foreigners, unexpected people, Unlikely people. Again and again, Scripture shows us that God isn't limited by the vessels we would have chosen. So stay spiritually awake. Your help may come through a co-worker, a neighbor, a stranger, someone you almost ignored, someone from your past who has changed. Don't worship the messenger, but don't reject them simply because they don't fit your expectations either. Discern. Watch their actions. Look at their character. Pay attention to the peace. And let God show you what the connection actually is. Tell me about a time when someone you never expected became God's hands to help you. Maybe it was a stranger. Maybe it was someone you had judged incorrectly. Maybe it was someone who appeared at exactly the right moment. Share it. Your story may help someone else stop overlooking their own answer. And write this if you're ready to stay open. I will not judge my blessing by its packaging. Because your breakthrough may be too important to reject simply because it didn't arrive in the package you expected. Chapter 7. When the help arrives, respond with honor, not idolization. Chosen one, imagine the moment. You've waited. You've prayed. You've wondered if anything was ever going to change. And then suddenly, someone shows up. A door opens. A conversation happens. A blessing lands in front of you. And for the first time in a long time, you can finally say, God, you heard me. You're going to be grateful. You may even be overwhelmed. But when that moment comes, remember one thing. Don't confuse the vessel with the source. The person may have carried the blessing, but God is still the one who provided it. Your helper is not your provider. They are the vessel. God remains the source. The psalmist asked, "Where does my help come from?" My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. God heard the prayer. God arranged the connection. God can soften the heart of the person who helps you. So honor that person. Thank them. Bless them. Never take their kindness for granted, but don't make them your God. Because there is a dangerous place where gratitude can quietly become dependency. You start thinking, what if they leave? What if they change their mind? What if I lose their favor? And suddenly, you're no longer grateful. You're afraid. That's not honor. That's bondage. Ask yourself, if the person who helped you disappeared from your life tomorrow, would you still trust God? Because if the answer is no, then your eyes may have moved from the source to the vessel. Honor says, I am deeply grateful for what you did. Idolization says, I can't survive without you. Honor releases. Idolization clings. Honor keeps your heart free. And remember, the blessing isn't supposed to stop with you. Jesus said, freely you have received, freely give. Today you may be the one receiving. Tomorrow you may be the one giving. Today someone may be the answer to your prayer. One day you may become the answer to someone else's. That's the beauty of it. The grace keeps moving. Think about the person who helped you when you were at your lowest. You probably still remember what it felt like. You remember the relief. You remember realizing that someone saw you. You remember what it felt like when somebody believed in you at a time when you were struggling to believe in yourself. Don't forget that feeling. Because one day, God may place someone in front of you who needs exactly what you once needed. And you'll know how to respond because you've been there. You've waited. You've wondered. You've needed help. And now you'll know what one act of obedience can mean to someone who is almost ready to give up. So honor the vessel. Thank them. Bless them. But keep your eyes on God. Because the person may be part of your story. They are not the source of your story. Before we close, subscribe and stay close. Not simply because of a number, but because I want the next message to be here when you need it. And I want you to do one more thing. Think about one person who became God's hands to you. Someone who helped you when you needed it most. Write their name or speak a blessing over their life in the comments. Let your gratitude be known. You never know who may read it. And maybe that person will one day see your words and realize just how much their obedience meant. Chosen one, if this message stirred something inside you, don't let that feeling disappear the moment this video ends. Hold on to it, because heaven is not silent. Your prayers have not gone unheard. Your help isn't simply somewhere in the distant future. Things can already be moving. People can already be positioned. Conversations can already be happening that you know nothing about. Doors can already be preparing to open. You just haven't seen them yet. And if this word blessed you and you genuinely feel led to help it reach someone else, there is a link in the description where you can sow into this work. But hear me clearly. Whether you give or not, I'm grateful that you're here. Your presence matters. Your faith matters. Your hunger for God matters. And before you leave, seal this moment with me. Write, Amen. I am staying in position because my help is on assignment. You don't need to know every detail right now. You don't need to know the person's name. You don't need to know which door will open first. You just need to stay ready. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May divine help reach you sooner than you expected. May the right people find you. May your name be spoken with favor in rooms you haven't entered yet. And may your heart remain anchored in the one who has never forgotten you. You are not overlooked. You are being positioned. So stay soft in spirit. Keep your eyes open. Don't let disappointment make you cynical. Don't let the waiting make you quit. And when the right connection finally arrives, don't be so focused on what you expected that you fail to recognize what God actually sent. Because one day, you may look back at this exact season and realize something. The waiting wasn't wasted. The silence wasn't empty. The isolation wasn't meaningless. The rejection wasn't the end. God was preparing you. God was preparing them. And God was preparing the moment when your paths would finally meet. Stay ready. Your help is on assignment.